Someone asks you, you think you have a wife? You think you have a family? Do you know so-and-so? Know so-and-so? This is your wife's boyfriend. Do you know that? You know that because you are stupid. Because when you think on stupid matters and you live your family. It was bad. Believe me.
Kama mimi alikuwa naongea sana masomo yangu na anaongea sana mambo ya kuacha mke wangu, anauliza wewe sasa, wewe ni mtu ya darasa la 4 na ulikuwa unataka kupindua serikali, ungepata nini? Ungepata nini? Na sasa unawacha mke wako, hata hakuna mtu atamtomba.
Really very harsh with me. Said, look at this big fellow here has not been circumcised. Today sit properly, you're going to be circumcised with a panga, machete, by a lady. This lady came, ordered me, sit properly. I sat. Then I just said, instead of using that panga for this small thing, why can't you chop off my head, my neck?
All sorts of bad language, you know. They were calling me Malaya, and I told them I haven't been a Malaya, I'm working.
Standing tall in Nairobi, Kenya's capital, Nyayo House might look like any other government building, standing tall, sleek, modern, and imposing, a towering symbol of the nation's political history. However, beneath this polished facade lies a chilling secret that not many are brave enough to talk about. To the average Kenyan, it's just another government building, home to immigration services, administrative offices, and public bureaucracy. But buried deep beneath its polished surface lies a hidden legacy, one built not of bricks or mortar, but of pain, silence, and screams long forgotten. During the reign of President Daniel Arap Moi, Nyayo House wasn't just a symbol of power, it became a living nightmare. Its basement, a hidden labyrinth where unspeakable horrors unfolded behind locked doors. Here, thousands of political prisoners, dissidents, and everyday Kenyans simply accused of opposing the regime were subjected to brutal torture. Beneath the cold concrete floors of this towering structure, human rights were obliterated. The screams of the innocent echoed in the dark as victims were crushed, broken, and left with scars that would never heal. Nyayo House became a place of terror, a place where fear thrived and lives were destroyed without a trace. Today we uncover the story of Nyayo House, not as a symbol of progress, but as a monument to pain and suffering, a dark chapter that Kenya has tried to forget but cannot. This is the story of Kenya's hidden chambers of horror, a tale that still sends shivers down the spine of everyone brave enough to face. Welcome to Dwayne True Crime, your getaway to the most intriguing and chilling true crime stories. Dive deep into the shadow with us as we unravel mysterious cases, explore unsolved mysteries, and uncover the dark secret hidden in plain sight. Subscribe and join us on this journey where every detail matters and the truth is more disturbing than fiction. In 1983, as Kenya settled deeper into the grip of President Daniel Arap Moi's regime, a towering structure began to rise in the heart of Nairobi. It was bold, it was modern, and it cast a long, gleaming shadow over the city. This was Nyayo House. Named after Moi's guiding principle, Nyayo, the Swahili word for footsteps. The building was meant to represent continuity, loyalty, and national strength. Moi had promised to walk into the footsteps of Kenya founding president Jomo Kenyatta, but the path he chose would lead the nation down a very different road, one paved with fear, silence, and control. At first glance, Nyayo House was a symbol of progress. It stood 27 stories high and was designed to centralize power, housing essential ministries like immigration, provincial administration, and internal security. The government called it a move towards efficiency, a way to serve the people better, and to most Kenyans walking past it, it was another office block. Maybe intimidating, but nothing out of the ordinary. But that was only the surface. Beneath the ground floor, hidden away from the public and protected by a tight circle of state operatives, the building served a much darker function. What was neither included in the architectural plans, at least not the ones shown to the public, was the basement, a place few entered and even fewer left unchanged. The basement of Nyayo House was not ordinary storage space. It was a secret holding facility, a network of dark, windowless cells, a maze of silence where men and women accused of dissent, some guilty of nothing more than speaking out or asking the wrong questions, were detained without trial, interrogated, beaten, starved, and tortured. And above it all, the rest of the country kept moving. Business as usual, the elevators working, the officials came and went, paperwork was filed, but a floor beneath the feet, human rights were being shattered behind locked, soundproofed doors. Nyayo House was never just a government building. From the moment the foundation was laid, it became a quiet monument to state-sponsored cruelty, a machine designed not only to run government operations, but to crush those who dared challenge it. To this day, many Kenyans still walk past Nyayo House without knowing the weight it carries. But for the survivors, for the ones who made it out of that basement alive, it is not just a building, it is a wound. They called it a detention facility, but the people who lived through it, they called it hell. For those dragged into the basement of Nyayo House, the nightmare began long before the first blow landed. Most were arrested without warning, at home, in offices, in broad daylight. No charges, no warrants, just a black car, dark suits, and silence. One of the most well-known survivors is Patrick Onyango, a former university student and activist. He was abducted in the 1980s for distributing political pamphlets. His crime? Questioning the government. He spent 38 days in the Nyayo House basement, locked in a dark, filthy cell where water would flood in up to his knees. His clothes rotted in his body. The smell of urine, blood, and fear never left. He spoke of beatings with iron rods, of electric shocks, of sleep deprivation so intense he began to hallucinate. He wasn't alone. In the cell next to him, a man screamed every night until one day he didn't. Some survivors said they were kept naked, exposed to freezing conditions, their skin blistering from the dampness and cold. Others were hung from the ceiling by their wrists, whipped and interrogated for hours, sometimes over nothing more than just rumors of dissent. There was no trial, no lawyer, no contact with families. For days, weeks, even months, they were ghosts. Many were broken, others survived, but they never walked the same again, mentally or physically. Then there were the ones who didn't survive at all. Their names were never recorded. Their stories were never told. They vanished beneath Nairobi's busy streets into the silence of Nyayo House. And the most chilling part, it was all state-sanctioned. Everything that happened in those basement walls was protected by the system, covered up, buried, until the victims began to speak loudly and unapologetically. Today, many survivors like Onyango are still fighting, not just for justice, but for remembrance, to make sure Kenya never forgets what happened in the basement. Despite courageous efforts by survivors and human rights defenders, the truth continues to fight for space in the national conscience, because forgetting is how the cycle begins again. In the aftermath of 2007-2008 post-election violence, Kenya was forced to confront its violent political history. The chaos that erupted after disputed election results left more than 1,000 people dead and hundreds of thousands displaced. But those few months of turmoil were only the tip of the iceberg. Beneath them lay decades of unresolved injustices, system abuse, and political repression. In 2008, as part of the National Accord and Reconciliation Act, the Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Commission, TJRC, was born. Modeled after South Africa's post-apartheid truth process, the TJRC was tasked with investigating gross human rights violations committed in Kenya from December 12, 1963 to February 28, 2008. The Commission's mandate was ambitious: to uncover truth, acknowledge victims, recommend reparations, and ensure non-recurrence of such violations. It will be a national soul-searching with one goal: healing. But amongst the hundreds of testimonies and sites of abuse documented during the Commission's work, one location stood out for its sheer horror and symbolic weights: Nyayo House. Political dissidents, students, activists, human rights defenders, journalists, and even ordinary citizens suspected of harboring anti-government views were arrested and brought to Nyayo House. Many were held without charge, interrogated without legal representation, and subjected to inhumane treatment. The torture methods were as varied as they were brutal: beating, electric shocks, waterboarding, starvation, sleep deprivation, and exposure to freezing water in flooded dark cells. Survivors spoke of physical, psychological, and sexual abuse. Some were held incommunicado for days, others for weeks. Many emerged scarred for life. Some didn't emerge at all. The TJRC collected dozens of these testimonies, painting a chilling pictures of what happened in those hidden corridors beneath the capital city. One survivor recalled, "You could hear the screams through the walls, but no one came. They were entirely at their mercy, and they had none." Another described the moment he was released. "I walked out into the sunlight, but I had changed. I left a piece of myself inside that cell and never been able to get it back." When the TJRC report was released in May 2013, it shook the nation. The section addressing state torture and detention under the Moi regime was damning. It confirmed beyond dispute that the government of Kenya had systematically violated the rights of its own citizens. Amongst its key findings, that the government of Kenya had engaged in widespread torture, arbitrary detention, and enforced disappearance, particularly during the 1980s and the early 1990s. The Nyayo House, as well as other sites like the Nyeri police station and Manyani prison, had been used for illegal detention and inhuman acts. That the operations of Nyayo House were coordinated by state security agencies with full knowledge of senior government officials. More than a decade has passed since the report was published, and yet the torture chambers of Nyayo House remain closed to the public. In fact, rather than opening them up, the site remains under legal notice number 11 of 1991, which designates the area as a protected security zone. Photography is prohibited, access is restricted, and despite clear public recommendations by the TJRC, no steps has been taken to transform it into a national monument. For survivors and families of victims, this inaction is a fresh wound. Organizations like the Kenya Human Rights Commission And the Law Society of Kenya has taken up the mantle, filing court petitions and publicly demanding the implementation of the TJRC's recommendations. In June 2024, a petition was brought before the High Court calling for the lifting of the restricted access designation and the conversion of the basement into a public museum or memorial sites. The petition argues that the chambers are not just government property, they are part of Kenyan's collective memory, and the public has a right to remember. One survivor, now in his 60s, stated at a press conference, "How can we heal if we are not even allowed to remember? Open the doors. Let the world see what we went through. Let our pain mean something." Their demand was simple. Let the people in. Let Kenyans see for themselves where democracy was silenced. Let young people know that this country once caged its own for daring to speak. But the government's response? Resistance. They argue that opening the chambers would compromise national security, that it would lead to unrest, even sabotage, that it's best left in the past. But what they're really afraid of, what are they really afraid is accountability. Because if we open the doors, we'll have to confront what's behind them. Preserving Nyayo House as a national monument is not about living trauma. It's about recognizing it. It's about documenting pain so it cannot be denied. It's about educating future generations so that authoritarianism, censorship, and political violence are not repeated. Kenya is not alone in this journey. Countries like South Africa, Rwanda, Germany, and Cambodia have all preserved sites of past atrocity, not to glorify them, but to ensure they are never forgotten. These spaces serve as both warning and witness, and Nyayo House could do the same. If the chambers are opened, if the bloodstains in the walls and the rusted rocks are preserved, narrated, and explained, then perhaps the nation can begin to stitch its torn history back together. The Truth, Justice, and Reconciliation Commission gave Kenya a roadmap towards healing. Its findings were honest, its recommendations were bold, but truth alone isn't enough. It requires action. Nyayo House still stands, its walls still carry secrets, but those secrets no longer belong to the shadows, they belong to the people. And it is the people, survivors, activists, youths, and citizens who continue to demand that the past be seen, heard, and remembered. Because healing begins when silence ends. In 2013, after years of gathering testimonies, reviewing classified documents, and listening to survivors, the Truth, Justice, and Reconciliation Commission released one of the most important reports in Kenyan post-independence history. It confirmed that what many already knew, but what the state had long denied, that the basement of Nyayo House was not just a detention center, it was a deliberately engineered torture facility. The TJRC found that during the 1980s and 90s, particularly under President Daniel Arap Moi regime, Kenyan security forces used these underground cells to detain, isolate, and torture those who dared to speak out. Political dissidents, student leaders, activist journalists, clergies. These weren't rogue incidents. These were state-sanctioned violence. Survivors describe it in chilling detail. Blindfolded, naked, beaten, locked in pitch black cells with ice cold water rising to their knees. No food, no lawyer, no contact to the outside world. Some were electrocuted, others suffocated in flooded chambers. All were broken, physically, mentally, spiritually. In 2013, the Truth, Justice, and Reconciliation Commission handed the nation a chance to heal, a chance to remember, a chance to confront the pain hidden in the basement of Nyayo House. Their recommendations was clear: preserve the torture chambers as a national monument. Let the public see what was done in their name. Let the truth breathe. But more than a decade later, that promise remains broken. The chambers are still sealed shut. No plugs, no guided tours, no acknowledgement. Instead, the state insists that Nyayo House is still a secure government facility, housing departments like immigration and intelligence. They claim it's too sensitive, too dangerous to let the public in. But for the survivors, the danger isn't remembering, it's in forgetting. Human rights organizations, lawyers, and survivors have refused to let the truth be buried. They've organized, petitioned parliament, demanded that the legal notice number 11, an obscure law from 1991 that labels Nyayo House a protected area, be revoked. They've taken the fight to court, arguing that keeping the chambers closed violates multiple constitutional rights: the truth, the right to the truth, the right to historical memory, the right to dignity, the right to access information, the right to historical memory, the right to dignity. The Commission's recommendation that the torture chambers beneath Nyayo House be preserved as a national monument, not to glorify the past, but to confront it, to create a permanent site of memory, a place where Kenyans could learn, remember, and promise never again. Many survivors are in their 60s and 70s, even older now. Some have passed on without ever seeing justice. How many more must fade away before they honor their truth? This isn't just a legal battle, it's a moral one. A battle for memory, a battle for truth, and it's still being fought. For the survivors, this wasn't just about justice. It was about dignity, about being seen, and about ensuring that future generations never have to suffer what they endured in the dark. History doesn't disappear just because we look away. It lingers in building, in silence, in the scars of those who survived Nyayo. Nyayo House isn't just a structure, it's a wound. And wounds don't heal by hiding them. They heal when we clean them, speak of them, and promise never to reopen them. What happened in those chambers was not a footnote. It was a warning, a reminder of how quickly power can turn cruel, of what happens when fear replaces freedom, when dissent is crushed instead of heard. If we want to heal, truly heal, we have to confront what broke us. That means acknowledging the voice we tried to silence. It means listening to the survivors, not just with sympathy, but with action. And it means making space for the truth, no matter how dark it is. Because that's where real freedom begins. Imagine if every Kenyan child learned about Nyayo House in school, not to shame our past, but to shape our future. Imagine tours through the chambers, guided by survivors, not silenced by security. A museum of truth, a wall of names, a space where the next generation can understand the cost of silence. Because education is protection and memory is resistance. The survivors are not just victims, they are living archives, walking proof that the human spirit can endure even the darkest of places. But their stories will vanish if we don't make space for them to be told. Kenya's journey isn't over, but we get to choose how the next chapter is written. Will it be the one of denial and delay? Or will it be the story of the truth, of justice, of reconciliation? The past cannot be changed, but we carry it. The past cannot be changed, but how we carry it, that's up to us. So today I ask you, remember, reflect, and never stay silent. Thank you for watching. If you made it this far, I just want to say your time, your curiosity, and your willingness to confront hard truth, they mean everything. This story isn't just history, it's memory, it's legacy, and it's still being written by voices like yours. If this episode moved you, please consider sharing it, leave a comment, start a conversation, and most importantly, remember, because justice begins when we refuse to forget. Until next time, stay curious, stay aware, and take care of each other.